When my husband Jackson called me an idiot in French for the 9th time in front of me while talking to his lover, Luna, I suddenly felt our marriage had lost its meaning. So, I accepted a job offer from a foreign company and booked a flight to Paris. The day after getting my visa, I slipped the divorce papers in with my resignation documents and handed them to him. As the CEO, he was about to read everything closely when his lover mentioned she had a stomachache. He quickly signed and left with her without a second thought. I didn't look back. Later, across the ocean, under the Eiffel Tower in Paris, a young man from Asia cried his eyes out but couldn't find the love he once had. "Miss Catherine, our company is thrilled to have you join us," said Anna across the ocean, laughing joyfully after getting my definite response. "When do you plan to start?" I thought for a moment and replied, "I'll be there within 2 weeks." After saying that, I hung up the phone, realizing Jackson was behind me. He frowned, asking, "Where are you going?" I looked at him coolly and said, "Out of the country." Jackson sneered, "Is this really necessary?" "So, I took Luna to our wedding anniversary yesterday. Is that worth scaring me with leaving the country?" I didn't bother to explain. He didn't know that I could understand his French conversation with Luna at the restaurant, where he complained freely about his dissatisfaction with me over the past 5 years, calling me a naive idiot. "You have no idea," he said, "she's just work, laundry, and cooking. We don't have common interests. I talk romance, she talks company profits. It's like marrying a maid. I regret it." Luna laughed and joked, "Jackson, if I hadn't gone abroad, would you have picked me?" What did Jackson say to that? He answered earnestly, "I definitely would've. Previously, I would have made a scene. But this time, I was strangely calm." I ate the last piece of steak under the sympathetic gaze of the waiter and left. "Enjoy your chat." "I'm heading home," I said. Luna pretended to stop me. "Catherine, Jackson and I were just discussing work. Don't worry too much." I ignored her and kept walking out, only to hear Jackson's frustrated voice, "Don't mind her, she's just crazy." The only person who caught up with me was the kind restaurant waitress. She looked like she wanted to say something. "Ma'am, I feel like there are things I should tell you." I smiled at her, "Thank you, but I understood everything." I vaguely remember her eyes filled with pity and sadness when she looked at me. It was pretty pathetic. So was this marriage. It was time to end it. After Jackson lectured me and realized I wasn't really reacting, he changed the topic. "Luna plans to join our company. I'm thinking she'll replace you. They say she's a top student from studying abroad, more deserving than you. If you still want to work, you can be her secretary. If not, just stay home as a stay-at-home wife." As he spoke, he watched my expression. Already planning to quit, I felt secretly happy. I had been wondering how to explain leaving, and now I didn't need to. Without thinking much, I agreed, "Fine, I'll quit so she can be the general manager." Jackson thought I was mad and saying the opposite, so he comforted me half-heartedly, "Stopping you from working is for your own good. Some women would kill for this. I'll take you traveling sometime to unwind." I shook my head, refusing. "If you mean it, then this week come with me to the orphanage to see the headmaster." Jackson agreed, "Sure, I haven't visited the headmaster in a while, too." Jackson and I grew up in the same orphanage. As kids, I was always stepping in to protect him when he was bullied because girls matured faster than boys. Back then, Jackson would look at me with those bright eyes and say, "When I grow up, it'll be my turn to protect you, Catherine. I'll treat you well forever." Too bad forever is a really long time. Casual promises hold little weight, and Jackson didn't keep his. In college, he had a change of heart, dazzled by the city's lights. He fell for Luna, the French major's campus queen. I should have seen it when he chose to take French specifically for her. At the time, Luna didn't choose Jackson. She went abroad with a rich guy. Now Jackson's successful, and I, the former Red Rose, was merely mosquito blood highlighting Luna's elegance. The next day, I went to the office to pack my things. On the way, the employees gave mixed looks. Some older staff close to me whispered, "Catherine, Jackson brought that woman to your office first thing this morning and had your stuff moved out. What's going on?" I nodded in acknowledgement, reassuring her by patting her hand. Stepping into the office, all my things were gone. Our wedding photo was in the garbage. Luna looked at me with satisfaction. "Sorry, Catherine, Jackson insisted I move in quickly, so my stuff had to be settled first." Spotting the photo in the trash, she feigned surprise. "Who accidentally tossed your wedding photo with Jackson in here?" She bent down to pick up the picture and handed it to me. I took it and tore the photo to pieces. There's no need to pick up something dirty. Behind me, I heard Jackson exclaim, "Catherine! What are you doing? How can you just rip up that photo?" He rushed to gather the pieces, trying to piece them back together, but shattered things and never returned to their original form, just like the feelings between Jackson and me. Once upon a time, I really treasured that photo. When Jackson and I just got married, he had just started his business. We were broke, and after buying wedding rings, we didn't have money left for anything else. I told him, "We don't have to take wedding photos, we can do it later." But Jackson insisted, "I just can't have you feel like you're missing out." To afford that photo shoot, he worked 10 nights and did odd jobs for 10 days to gather the money. Looking back now, it wasn't that expensive, just a little over $1,000. Not even enough to buy one of Jackson's ties now. Yet, it was these photos that made me, even after knowing he had a brief moment of weakness, still marry him without hesitation. But as it turns out, once there's a crack, it's better to break away sooner. Ignoring Jackson's hysterics, I casually pulled out a document. "Here are my resignation papers for you to sign." Seeing my calm demeanor since the night before, a rare hint of panic flickered on Jackson's face. After glancing at the document, he said, "If you don't want to resign, we can talk about it. I can find another role for Luna." Luna, alarmed, didn't want to lose what she was counting on, so she tugged at Jackson's sleeve, whining, "Jackson." But this time, Jackson didn't pay her any attention. Instead, he looked at me, waiting for my response. I smiled indifferently. "No need, I've had enough of this job after all these years." Jackson gritted his teeth, clearly frustrated and determined. He slammed the table. "Fine, you said it, don't regret it." He opened the agreement, ready to read it. But Luna, fearing further twists, claimed her stomach hurt, urging, "Jackson, my stomach hurts, just sign it quickly and take me to the hospital." Hearing that, Jackson quickly signed his name and rushed out with Luna. I looked at the resignation papers on the desk, my heart finally eased. Jackson wouldn't know that hidden within was our divorce agreement. From the moment he signed, we were strangers. I took the papers and went back home to gather my belongings, taking what I could and discarding the rest. I erased all traces of us in the house. There was the jar of 1,000 stars he folded for me at 13. The love letters he wrote me at 18. The gold ring he bought with all his money when he proposed. Things I once cherished, but without love, they now seemed so cheap. Jackson returned at 8 p.m., weary from travel. He noticed the house felt emptier, raising an eyebrow. Turning around to see the bags I had packed, he casually asked, "What's all this?" I made up a random excuse, "Just too much clutter at home, I'm organizing." Half believing me, he opened the closet, puzzled by the absence of my clothes. "Where are your clothes?" I smiled. "You wanted me to be a full-time wife, right? My stuff is old, I'm tossing them for new things." He scoffed. "You have no qualms about spending my money, but go ahead." Then he added, "I've cleared my schedule to visit the orphanage with you tomorrow." I agreed, all right. Having grown up together, I wanted to part ways properly. Saturday morning, I dressed nicely for a change. Over the years, I juggled company tasks and took care of our home, leaving no time for myself. Staring in the mirror, I saw how time had changed me. No wonder Jackson had called me ugly and haggard. Jackson was donned in a crisp suit. After a quick breakfast, we headed out. On the road, we reminisced peacefully about our childhood memories at the orphanage and the tough time starting his business. But halfway there, a call shattered the calm. From the corner of my eye, I saw Luna's name on the screen. It was Luna. After the call, Jackson pulled over, conflicted. "Catherine, something came up at work, I need to handle it." I didn't bring up the real issue, just opened the door and got out, sincerely saying through the window, "Goodbye. Jackson, goodbye forever." I took a cab to see the orphanage caretaker on my own. She was old, her hair gray, and she held my hand, asking, "Why didn't Jackson come?" Not wanting to tell her the truth, I lied, "He's caught up at work." She sighed, "I feel Jackson's changed. He always made time before, what's happened?" I smiled but didn't answer. After spending the morning at the orphanage, I returned to the villa. Leaving behind the signed divorce papers, I rolled my luggage out the door. Right before boarding the plane, I said farewell to Jackson in French. With a petty touch, I added, "You're the fool." Then I blocked all his contacts and switched to a new phone number. From then on, we'd never meet again. Arriving in Paris, the company sent a tall, handsome French guy to pick me up. His eyes were a deep blue, like the vast ocean, clear and bright. He took my luggage with gentlemanly grace, speaking to me in somewhat choppy Chinese. "Hello, Miss Catherine, I'm Alan, sent from HQ to pick you up." I shook his hand with a smile and replied in French, "You can speak French with me, I can understand." Surprise crossed his eyes before he smiled, "Your French is excellent." I chuckled, "You flatter me." I decided to learn French after seeing Jackson and Luna speak it in front of me repeatedly. They'd brush it off as work stuff when I'd ask. What kind of job can make someone so happy, so animated? During that time, no matter how busy I was, I'd always set aside an hour a day to study French. Even during my free time, I'd swap out my entertainment for watching French movies. I wanted to be able to chat with him and Luna when they talked. But after I learned French, the first thing I heard Jackson say was, "Catherine is an idiot, I'll divorce her sooner or later." In that moment, I saw him for who he truly was. Surprisingly, I wasn't as upset as I expected. I was shockingly calm. Maybe deep down, I already had my answer. So even when they mocked me in French right in front of me, I didn't let it show. Instead of wasting my energy on Jackson, I gradually began to take control of the company's clients one by one. Joining this French company was made possible by these resources I had and the experience I had built up in the renewable energy sector over the years. Jackson kept calling me an idiot, but the real idiot was him. The company was being gutted, and he didn't even notice. I bet Jackson, realizing now that his client base is dwindling, feels like an ant on a hot griddle. Ironically, the first French company I partnered with was Jackson's. Losing so many clients, he had no choice but to seek out international markets. And the French company I work for is a hurdle he can't overcome. Meanwhile, Jackson is facing an even bigger issue. After I left, those loyal employees who had been with us since the early startup days submitted their resignation letters when they found out what happened between us. Sometimes, I log into my old message account. Many old colleagues send me messages, comforting me, congratulating me on a happy divorce, and wishing me well on my new journey. They hope we can work together again someday. I thank them one by one. But more often, it's Jackson's messages that I receive. Since the day he knew I was gone, he's been messaging me every day. Initially asking why I never told him I spoke French, then repeatedly apologizing. He reminisces about how far we've come together, from relying on each other in the orphanage, to him helping me with schoolwork, to us sharing a bowl of ramen during the hardest parts of our startup days, never thinking we'd part. I sneer inside. He did wrong but asks me why. I ignore him. His words only make me more aware that I made the right choice. I throw myself into work. And just like that, 3 years pass. In these 3 years, I've steadily climbed from manager at the French headquarters to the chairman of the American division. Only I know the effort it took. In these 3 years, I didn't date anyone. Not because I haven't forgotten Jackson. Quite the opposite, there have been plenty of men around me. That includes the charming blue-eyed French guy who picked me up at the airport when I first arrived. He confessed to me once, and I made it clear, we can have fun, but it's nothing serious. The next second, he wrapped his arm around my waist and kissed me. I admit, his skills were impressive. I never replaced him. I even arranged for him to join me when I returned to China. Over these 3 years, I've worked on becoming stronger. I've realized more and more, a woman can only truly rely on herself. When you shine in a field, both men and wealth naturally come your way. What I didn't expect was running into Jackson the moment I returned to China. He somehow learned I was coming back and waited for me at the airport. When I got off, he waved frantically. "Catherine, over here." I followed his voice, and compared to 3 years ago, he looked much older. Deep tear troughs, wrinkles on his face, and from afar, I could even see some gray hairs. While Jackson was visibly emotional, I stayed calm. I didn't purposely avoid him because I wasn't the one at fault. I had nothing to hide. Approaching him, I asked, "What do you want?" Jackson looked a bit lost at my indifference. Almost pleading, he said, "Catherine, I've thought a lot these 3 years. I really know I was wrong. Can you forgive me?" I nodded. "I accept your apology. Anything else? Will you come back with me?" He tried to grab my hand, but I stepped aside. I firmly warned him, "Jackson, we're divorced now. Please respect that." He shook his head with reddened eyes. "But I never agreed to it. You tricked me into signing that divorce agreement." I smirked, "But so what? The fact is, we're divorced. You can't change that. If you've got nothing else, move aside, or I'll call the police for harassment." Jackson seemed deflated, and though he opened his mouth, nothing came out. I dragged my suitcase and walked past him, while my French companion asked in French, "Who is he, sis?" I replied with a smile, "An idiot." I'll admit, I'm petty in some ways. Over the years, I've heard bits and pieces about Jackson through mutual friends. After I left, he went through a crazy phase. He searched everywhere for me, drank himself into a stupor night after night, pretending to be deeply affectionate. He eventually found out I'd moved to Paris and flew over. He wandered around Paris for a month, hoping to chance upon me. During that time, Luna realized she couldn't hold on to Jackson, so she started cooking the books, transferring money out of Jackson's account. In just a month, she siphoned off 80 million. By the time Jackson found out and returned, Luna had gotten a green card for the US and emigrated. She hasn't been caught since. Jackson's company ended up facing bankruptcy and liquidation. They publicly announced it. So, I know clearly that he's apologizing not because he knows he messed up, but because he knows I'm his best option right now. Once everything was settled, I went back to the orphanage to visit the director. Compared to 3 years ago, she was sitting by the door, bent over, soaking in the sun. She looked more tired, with more wrinkles on her face. Time leaves its mark on everyone. She was so happy to see me and came up to me quickly. I hurried to help her. The first thing she asked was, "Catherine, how have you been these years? Being alone in a foreign country for so long must have been tough." I just smiled and shook my head, saying, "Not tough, look, I've got a great career now." She gently patted my head like she used to. "Silly child, being in a foreign land all those years, it's impossible not to have hardships. I know all about you and Jackson. He's the one in the wrong." I stayed silent, fearing she'd tell me to get back with him. But unexpectedly, she said, "It's good you left. Yesterday he came to me, hoping I'd convince you. I sent him away. He didn't know how to cherish what he had, so he deserves the consequences." I felt my eyes get a little teary. "I thought you'd try to convince me to give him another chance." She sighed, "We women have it tough enough already. If we have an unsatisfactory partner, it's just wasting our life. As a kid, when others bullied Jackson, you always stood up for him. You were scared like the rest, yet you still protected him. When you graduated and started your business, you came from a reputable school. It would have been easy to just marry well and live comfortably. Yet, you chose to stick it out with him through thick and thin. If he'd only thought about the journey you've been through together, he wouldn't have done so many things to hurt you. If I were to plead for him, it would be betraying your genuine heart. She pulled me into her embrace, just like when I was a kid. Time goes by so fast. The tree that Jackson and I planted during a tree day at the orphanage is now tall and lush. Everything has changed between us two. After spending an afternoon with the director, I went back. I didn't expect to end up trending that night. Someone exposed my supposed relationships with 8 men. The trending topics read, Chairwoman of New Energy's U.S. division with 8 boyfriends, explosive, billionaire woman CEO with 8 boyfriends, chat records of female CEO with boyfriend exposed. The comments section even had some chat records with one of the guys and a photo of me hugging a Frenchman at a hotel. I scrolled through the comments casually. Damn, is this for real? 8 guys. Queen, your life is my dream. Wow, he's so handsome. Those deep blue eyes just pierce right into my heart. Some folks were more critical. Does no one have a sense of morality? Having 8 guys at once ruined societal norms. Yeah, if a guy did this, he'd be dragged through the mud. Before I could finish reading, an unknown number called. I picked up to hear Jackson's voice. Catherine, are you alright? Instantly, I realized why this was trending. Instead of covering it up, I directly asked, Jackson, did you leak this? He went silent, which was as good as admitting it. I scoffed, you've outdone yourself this time. He hurried to explain, Catherine, listen, if you agree to get back together, I'll make sure the paparazzi delete everything and clear your name, ensuring your work isn't affected. His audacity amazed me again, and I mockingly replied, big deal. It's the 21st century, people are open-minded. Having 8 men interested in me only shows my charm. It's all consensual. I've reached where I am through my own capabilities and resources. You think a little scandal is a threat? Dream on. Then, I hung up and called the French guy. Alan, were you the one who provided the chat logs and photos? Caught off guard, Alan started to deny it. It wasn't me. No need to deny it. I just want to know, what were you thinking? After a moment of silence, he finally spoke. I thought my relationship with you could progress further. So, you gave your photos and records to Jackson thinking it'll help cement your position using public opinion? I thought you were smarter. From the start, I was clear, we're good for fun, but not for a relationship. This time, you crossed a line. I'll request your transfer back to Paris. No need for more words. Since Jackson, men have just been adornments in my life. That trending topic didn't last long. The blogger deleted it and the French headquarters pressed it down, so it didn't cause much of a stir. But Jackson posted on Twitter, claiming, I am Catherine's ex-husband. She's a great woman. It's my fault she ended up in this situation. I leaked all this, hoping for another chance with her, which now seems impossible. Alan, the other person involved in the mess, also came to my defense. I did this willingly. I always knew Catherine was seeing other men. She made it clear from the beginning. Because of all this, my followers on Twitter skyrocketed by over 1 million in just a few days. Some followers even admire me, asking, Sis, how do I get a bunch of hot guys to fall head over heels for me? I didn't respond to them. Instead, I posted on social media, love yourself first, improve yourself, and then enjoy the world. With that, the situation sort of wrapped up. After that incident, Jackson kept a low profile for quite a while. That was until Luna was arrested and brought back to our country. The police caught wind of one of her purchase records in the US on message. They tracked her down through the address and eventually deported her back. In the 2.5 years in the States, she had burned through nearly 80 million. The money they recovered was barely anything, like a drop in the bucket for Jackson. I attended Luna's court trial. There, he openly complained to other women about his grievances with me over the past 5 years. After the session ended, Jackson ran up to her and, clearly upset, asked. Why did you treat me like this? What did I ever do to you? Luna sneered. Jackson, how do you have the nerve to ask? Catherine did so much for you, yet you stood there and insulted her in a language she couldn't even understand. Do you really think I would trust my future to someone like you? From the start, I was just after your money. But after Catherine left your company, its performance tanked. Waiting until you went bankrupt before leaving would have been a total loss. Luna's words stripped Jackson of all dignity. He collapsed, crying on the ground, looking towards me, muttering apologies. I ignored him, and as I was about to leave, Luna looked at me and said, Catherine, feeling smug now, aren't you? I turned to her, smiling. What's there to be smug about? Isn't this the outcome you deserve? You broke the law, you know. With a smile, I walked out of the courtroom. The next time I heard about them was 3 months later. Jackson, shattered by what happened, drowned his sorrows in booze. One night, intoxicated, he found Luna and stabbed her multiple times out of rage. Luna died on the spot, and Jackson was arrested. At Jackson's place, they found a letter addressed to me. The cops handed it over, but I didn't bother reading it. I just tore it up and tossed it in the trash. I didn't feel much about them. Just a bit contemplative about the unpredictability of life. Maybe fate had quietly set up their destinies long before. Their ending didn't concern me. I glanced up at the sky. The sun was shining bright. Today is a good day.